Hi, thanks for joining us today on Intermountain Medical Center TV. We've got a great topic today. It's grocery shopping.
Yes.
Now, a lot of people hate grocery shopping. I mean, you've got to try to find everything. Sometimes you've got your kids with you.
Yep.
It's not always a fun experience. But not really the grocery shopping, it's more what to shop for.
Yep.
So we've got Kary Woodruff from TOSH here today. She's been working with the 15 firefighters for the My Heart Challenge. And we're going to talk about grocery shopping.
Yep.
How's it been going so far with the firefighters?
You know, it's been great. They've been very engaged. They've been very involved, asking really good questions. They've been really just involved in the process, so it's been a lot of fun.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So today we're going to start with grocery shopping, and we've got firefighter Mark West with Unified Fire Authority. He's going to be on shortly to talk about how it's going with the challenge. And actually about 2 weeks ago, you and Mark went to a grocery store to walk through kind of what to look for and what to be aware of. So we documented that. We captured about a 4-minute video or so on that. So we're going to turn over to that video, go ahead and watch it, see what tips they have to offer. When we come back, Kary and Mark will go ahead and continue the conversation about grocery shopping.
We're going to do a little grocery store tour. Now quickly, before we even go into the store, 2 tips, Mark. Have a list and don't show up hungry. You ever noticed any personal experience with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we tend to buy a lot more if we don't do either of those.
Right.
Okay, so first tip, shop the periphery of the grocery store. That's where we tend to find more of the fresh produce, fresh breads, fresh meats, dairy. Deli item. We have to be a little cautious with deli items. They tend to be higher fat and higher sodium options, especially with the preservatives that we see in deli foods. So we're going to want to look for lower sodium deli meats. Sometimes there are lower sodium cheeses available, and when you do select cheese, select a stronger flavor cheese so you can get away with using less.
Yep, good idea.
All right, let's head into the produce.
Okay. Kary, there's a lot of prepackaged products that are fresh, that are here on the shelf versus the actual fresh produce that's out in the stand here. Can you explain the differences there for me?
Yep, absolutely. So I think it's a matter of degree, right? So if you have the time and availability to get the really fresh stuff, wash it, prep it, that's going to be your better option. It's going to be fresher and maybe have slightly more nutrients because it's fresher. We get different nutrients with different groups of color. So lots of reds, and that's going to give us lots of vitamin C, like the apples and tomatoes and bell peppers. Lots of oranges, going to give us lots of beta carotene, so the carrots, the yams, the butternut squashes, the greens, the leafy green vegetables, the spinach, the kale, Swiss chard, broccoli, going to give us lots of vitamin K, some lutein, going to give us lots of folic acid, and then we like the purples, so the berries, the grapes, and they'll have lots of flavonols, good antioxidants. So all you have to remember is the more color, the better.
The more color, the better.
Yep.
There you go.
How many different options of breads, right? I mean, literally, there's dozens.
Right.
And so let's look at some of these breads. The other tip for bread, I want to see at least 3 grams fiber, 3 grams protein per serving.
You know, firefighters are looked at as the meat and potatoes kind of guys.
Oh, yeah.
You eat it every meal, you know, you have to have it, or if you don't have it, it's not the complete meal, and they don't get full. What hints would you have, or helpful ideas would you have about choosing meats and so on and so forth for the firefighter doing this heart challenge diet?
Yep, you know, we want to make sure we're trying to focus more on the lean meats. So, you know, the white meat chicken and white meat turkey, those are going to be leaner. Those should be more of a staple. And then the red meats we use a little less often, maybe once or twice a week. And the less marbling, the leaner it tends to be, right? So if we look at a steak, it should be mostly red. We want to try and avoid too much marbling, and that will indicate that it'll be lower in saturated fat, which is the not so heart healthy fat.
Right. Okay, good.
In general, people are eating fish 2 to 3 times a week. That's what we're going for. I mean, sure, get some darker colored ones as well for the omega-3s. But people sometimes get overwhelmed with trying to say, well, do I have enough salmon and tuna versus the halibut and whatnot? And so if you're getting a variety of fish, you'll be meeting your omega-3 needs. Yeah. So Mark, I get asked a lot, you know, what do I think about frozen versus canned vegetables versus fresh? And there is sort of a hierarchy, right? So we see fresh tends to be best. Frozen is actually pretty comparable though, because it can be picked fresh and frozen right away. So you'll still see a lot of good nutrients found in the frozen. And then I would say canned is sort of a third option. It tends to be not as fresh. Sometimes you'll see added sugars or added sodium. So they can be good every now and then, but try and get more of the fresh, more of the frozen.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, Mark, I hope this was helpful today.
Very much so.
Great, great. So just a couple key points to keep in mind. Come prepared, so don't be hungry, and have a list. Make sure you know what you're going to get. Try and shop the periphery of the grocery store. That's where we tend to find more fresh foods, trying to minimize the packaged foods, and get used to reading labels. Look at added sugars and added sodium. Get used to reading the fat content, the sodium content. And the more, you will become so much more educated just by reading food labels, and that can be a great tool for the consumer as well.
Awesome.
So,
Thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
absolutely. So, Mark, what did you think? How did you like the grocery store tour?
It was great. It was very educational. It started me thinking a lot more about what's really in things that you purchase to put inside you.
Yep. So let me ask this, since the challenge has started, how have your grocery habits changed?
A lot more vegetables, a lot of
Great.
colored vegetables.
Yeah, sure.
And being creative with introducing vegetables in that I may not have normally added in before.
Oh, interesting.
In creative ways.
Like what?
Like zucchini spirals, or
fun.
like yam chips,
Yep.
or something like that are baked, those types of things.
Yep, nope, that's amazing. And so you do notice that you are getting more color with the foods
Right.
that you're purchasing?
Yes.
Okay. What have you noticed about how food tastes based on how you've been shopping for foods and preparing more fresh foods? Do you notice your tastes have changed at all?
A little bit, and the thing that's glaring is the fact that because we're all kind of cutting back on our sodium,
Yep.
things taste great, but when you taste something that's already been prepared, or somebody else has prepared and put their usual amount of salt, it's glaringly salty.
Yep. So let me know if I'm accurately paraphrasing. When we buy more fresh fruits and vegetables, fresh meats, fresh produce and grains and whatnot, and less processed packaged foods, our sodium intake tends to actually be lower, and that changes our tastes and our preferences. So when you go to the grocery store, you actually don't want as many of the processed and packaged foods, because you see that they tend to taste a lot saltier.
And they don't taste good.
Yeah, they don't taste as fresh.
Right.
Sure. Anything else that you've really noticed that have changed with your grocery shopping habits other than your produce purchasing?
Well, as we talked about it, planning more menus out.
Oh, sure.
For a longer period of time.
Yep.
Where my wife's schedule and I conflicts a lot as far as when we're home and when we're not.
Yep.
Trying to plan around the schedule a shopping list that would allow us to fix menus for each other whether we're there or not.
Yep, absolutely. So meal planning ahead of time and going to the grocery store with a list,
Right.
and having some things that you know that you're going to buy.
Exactly.
So I think we have a question here, and the question is coconut oil a healthy option? So do you have any thoughts on that before?
We can actually kind of briefly talked about that in the
Yep.
store. And go ahead.
No, sure. So Margaret from Salt Lake City, you know, coconut oil right now is very trendy. It's very popular, and sometimes it's, I think, almost overemphasized just because it has all of these healthful benefits. Now, coconut oil is high in saturated fat. Traditionally, saturated fat is associated with higher risk of heart disease. And now what we're starting to see is that not all saturated fats are created equal, right? So there are some saturated fats that may actually be healthful versus those that are going to be harmful to our health. Coconut oil is a healthier saturated fat. So yes, I think integrating in some coconut oil is a good option, and some people really enjoy the flavor. I would just say not to the exclusion of the olive oils and maybe canola oil and or peanut oil, because there's different benefits to those oils as well. So the monounsaturated fats won't be as high in the coconut oil. The monounsaturated fat is very healthy for our heart. So we want to make sure that we're still getting the olive oils and some of the other oils. So a variety is going to be a good option.
And as you alluded to earlier, that sometimes you can alter the taste of things and make things taste actually a little better with a little bit of coconut oil or a little bit of olive oil. You may have a preference for one or the other.
Yeah, absolutely. I find for stir fries, peanut oil actually adds a really nice flavor. For baking, I'll use canola oil. For sauteing vegetables, I think that olive oil can be really good. Some people use coconut oil in that context as well. Salad dressings, that's going to be more of a taste preference. So yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely. Now, what have you noticed about when you go to the grocery store? You know, we talked about shopping the periphery.
Yes, we did.
And do you notice that you are shopping more in the periphery and going down the aisles less frequently?
Yes, and I also am shopping a lot slower.
Oh, interesting. What do you mean by that?
You're taking more time to examine exactly what you're getting. Like we talked about, the vegetables and fruits, where they're grown, how far they're being transported.
Yeah, absolutely.
What the content is, you know, and there's a lot of notes in the area of the store where they have, you know, a breakdown of nutrition. Actually, they're exposed for you, so you can kind of add in things that you may be not getting just by looking at a few labels and taking a little longer rather than rushing through the store and power shopping.
Absolutely. And the other piece that will take more time, but I think is so essential, and it's piggybacking right off of what you've been saying, but reading food labels. Right? Do you notice that you're, in addition to reading where foods are sourced and some of the information that the supermarket will provide, but do you notice that you're reading labels more often?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And paying more attention to the order in which they're placed, showing the propensity for ingredients to be, you know, on the first of the list there's more of that ingredient versus on the end of the list. So if you're going through and you're trying to watch your salt, if salt's the very last item, it's probably a pretty low on the priority of what's been the ingredients that are put in that product.
Absolutely. And sugar is another one, right?
Yes, exactly.
We don't want to see sugar being one of the top 2 ingredients.
No.
Yeah. Okay. We have another question. So there's someone asked a question about going gluten-free. Do you remember what we said about that? We talked a little bit about it. No, it's okay. You know, going gluten-free is appropriate for individuals who have celiac disease and have a gluten intolerance, so it would be appropriate in that situation. I think where the concern is that gluten is found in a lot of processed packaged flour products, so refined flours and refined pastries and bread products and snacks and whatnot that have the refined flours will be high in gluten, and I think we can overconsume those products. But naturally occurring gluten in the form of barley or wheat berries is going to be probably a healthful addition to our diet, and not something that we should avoid. So I do think we should avoid processed packaged foods, more of the refined flours, the white flours, a lot of the enriched flours as you read a label. But if something says 100% whole wheat, that's going to be a healthier form of gluten that probably is not going to be as problematic for us. Now the research is changing. We may learn something differently in the next 5 to 10 years, but right now I think finding less processed forms of gluten can be a very helpful part of our diet.
And this might dovetail into your formula for good bread?
Yes. Yep, absolutely. So do you remember what I said? What do we want to see for bread?
We want to see that 5 ingredients, if I remember right. We wanted to see flour, yeast, water, salt, a little bit of salt, and it escapes me.
And you could have a little sweetening like honey would be okay. So and flour, hopefully it's 100% whole wheat flour when we see that. But we do want to see breads that have fewer ingredients. Now, if there's more than 5 ingredients, but it's coming from other whole grains, great. That's a great addition. You just don't want to see breads that have all these ingredients that you can't even pronounce their names and can't recognize, and lots of chemicals. Those are the sorts of bread. So do you remember what's a good kind of way to flag some of the healthier, fewer ingredient breads?
Based on the carbohydrate that they have per slice, the
so
calorie per slice.
Yep, exactly. And if they're local. So local breads, not always, but if they're local, they don't need as many preservatives because they're not being transported as far. So Aspen Mills or Prairie Grains or some of the other local breads tend to have less added ingredients. So that's another way to kind of know that your bread's going to be a healthier form of bread.
Good.
Yep. And overall, any tips that you would provide at the at-home listeners that you think would be something? Oh, and maybe we'll answer one more quick question. So what are some healthy alternatives to crackers or pretzels for snacks? Can I ask you quickly, Mark, if you have found any helpful?
Almonds.
Yep, absolutely.
Almonds that are, you know, and you can just buy the raw almonds that aren't treated
unsalted.
or anything. Unsalted. And then just go ahead and put them in your oven at like 350 for 15 minutes, just roast them up a little bit. The yam chips that I was telling you about.
Yep.
If you just put those in the oven on a cookie sheet that's elevated so the air can get underneath them, they're great. They have a lot of nice flavor to them.
Yep.
It's just being a little bit creative with what you're doing.
Yep, absolutely.
Like rather than just using the whole the broccoli floret, use the broccoli stalk too as some texture that you're going to add to foods.
Yep. I find other good snack options. Nuts are great. I think vegetable chips are great. Even just fresh vegetables like baby carrots. Fruits can be a great way to get in some healthy carbohydrates versus the pretzels and the crackers. String cheese or yogurt can be other great snacks as well. So I think that's going to be another great option. And then Cindy asks about what kind of yogurt is best. Do you remember this one?
Yeah,
I'm grilling Mark here.
The Greek yogurts are always better. Usually they have, but again, check the label.
Yeah.
But they usually have a higher protein content.
They do.
And less calories involved.
Well, less added sugar.
Yeah, less
Sometimes
added sugar,
the calories are a little bit high, but it's coming from the protein. So I do like Greek yogurt because it does tend to have higher protein, usually less sugars. But look at the ingredient list. We should ideally be seeing 15 or 16 grams of sugar or less per carton of yogurt. A non-fat would be better than a low-fat or a regular fat option. Right. So, yeah. So hopefully we've answered all of your questions at home. And then just to sort of get back to that summarizing point, any just quick messages that you would prompt for any at-home listeners?
Plan a week's worth of meals in advance.
Yep.
Make a good list. Go to your pantry before you go shopping,
yes,
so you don't duplicate and triplicate things.
Yeah.
Make sure that you put a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables in your cart.
Yep.
And just make sure that you watch your portion size and be realistic about it. Don't say this is a half a cup. Measure out a half a cup so you have an idea that that's truly it.
Absolutely, because our portion, what we call portion distortion, right? We can be very off with our portion estimation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Mark, you did my job for me, so thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. And now we're going to switch to a quick little video. But I appreciate you coming down, your participation, and we still have a little ways to go. But I think we're on the right track. We're seeing lots of positive changes and some great things going on. So we'll check back in with our participants throughout the challenge. Keep checking back in at the website, and we'll see how everyone's doing.
Perfect. Thank you, Kary.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, so first of all, our viewers at home, you may have noticed a little keyword pop up on your screen, alarm. You may want to remember that word for your weekly check-in progress reports, alarm. Okay. Carl, we just saw a little video of the obstacle course. What did you think? How was it?
You know, it's kind of a little nervous going into it. But,
sure, because you didn't know what to expect,
yeah,
right?
didn't know what to expect. You know, you pull up and you see all these people there and some media and see the obstacle course. You're trying to size up. Right? No pressure at all. Yeah. So, but overall, it was a good experience. You know, I thought it was well laid out.
Okay.
It's applicable to my job or a firefighter's job.
Good.
As far as that goes. So, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
And then we're going to check back in with that obstacle course in June, and hopefully we'll see some improvements.
I hope so.
Though I was saying, I think we should have done the obstacle course first thing because, you know, you're already a lean, mean fighting machine 4 weeks into the challenge, right?
A little leaner.
Yes, yes. Okay.
Some ways to go.
Well, talking about some ways to go, that can be a great segue into eating out and how to eat out healthfully to help you become more lean, right?
Right.
Now, firefighters are known, I don't want to say notorious, but they're well known for eating out a lot, and part of that's the nature of the job. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Food's a big thing to a firefighter as far as that goes. I've had some of the best meals and some of the worst meals in a fire station.
Oh, I'm sure. But because of the nature of your schedule, sometimes you eat out a lot. Is that correct? Because you're maybe going from one thing to another, and so you're stopping in and eating out. Is that correct?
Absolutely. You know, day-to-day firefighter, they take a number of calls during the day. It's hard to get a meal. For me, I'm in a number of meetings here and there, so yeah, it's tough.
Yep. And what are some of the biggest challenges that you found in trying to follow a heart healthy diet with the Heart Challenge while eating out?
Well, it's finding good food to eat. That's that's really a challenge for me. So
sure. So we'll talk about some additional tips, but anything that you can maybe give us a heads up to that you have found to be helpful in trying to follow a heart healthy diet?
Well, I find myself having to prepare things ahead of time that obviously don't need to be refrigerated.
Yep, meal planning.
I can take with me and have on the road that I can just grab, whether it's an apple or a kashi bar, something like that. That's quick.
And what that does is that circumvents the need to eat out altogether, right?
Right.
So I always tell people I think eating out can be healthy and can be a part of our everyday life. Well, maybe not every day, but it can be part of our lifestyle and can be very enjoyable. But we shouldn't be eating out because of necessity. So ideally we're eating out if we want to enjoy people's company and we want to make it a more social experience. But if we're eating out because we haven't packed or planned, let's pack and plan and focus on that. It's interesting, Carl, we've looked at studies and people who eat out more tend to spend a lot more money on their food, which makes sense, right?
It does.
We actually look at when we compare what people eat at home versus what they eat when they eat out, we actually tend to find that people eat a lot more healthfully when they're eating at home versus eating out.
Absolutely.
That makes sense.
Yep.
And then the other piece is it saves time. So if we plan meals for a week and we can go home and make meals really quickly, it actually saves time from always having to go out to eat. I mean, I think I can make a 15-minute stir fry quicker than you can go through the takeout line at Cafe Rio. I'm just suggesting.
Done.
So, yes. Okay, well, so let's talk about some other tips for eating out healthfully. Now, the number one thing that I think can be really helpful is know before you go. And that phrase is used in other contexts, but I think for eating out, it can be very helpful. So when I say know before you go, we've talked about this a little. Do you know what I'm trying to reference here?
Know what I want to eat. Know certain boundaries that I want to stay within for myself.
Yeah, and so have you gotten into the habit at all, and it's okay if you haven't, but trying to look ahead before you eat out? So looking at the menu. So that's I think key.
Absolutely.
So talk about that.
As I find myself in situations where my coworkers say, hey, let's go to lunch. Say, okay, where are we going to lunch?
Yeah,
absolutely. We talk about where we're going to lunch. They're aware that I'm trying to be healthier and eat a more healthy diet. And so, they've been very good to make suggestions, and I've made suggestions. And so we base a little bit of where we go on that.
Great. And have you found that through the process, you've got an idea of what restaurants will have some better options versus restaurants where you go where it's just hard to find a healthy option? Have you noticed that?
Yeah, a few. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, it does happen. And then the other piece I would recommend is not only knowing just healthy options, less healthy options, but maybe take the extra 2 minutes to look at the calorie information, right? Because even a healthy restaurant could have something that looks very healthy but could be very high in calories.
Absolutely.
And we talked about that. Some examples, some salads can be over 1,000 calories, right?
Exactly.
So looking up the calorie information before you go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we do have a question. Are creamers and coffee okay, or are there better alternatives? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't.
You know what? There are some good, it's just like what we talked about with meats and with breads. Some are good and some won't be as helpful as others. So I like coffee creamers that are very low in saturated fat. Coffee creamers should not have any trans fat. So some of the coffee-made coffee creamers do have trans fat in them. I would not recommend those. I use a soy-based creamer, and that will be lower in saturated fat, lower in calories than some of the other creamers. So just avoid the coffee creamers that are going to be high in saturated fat. And that'd be a good way to go. And portion, right? So 1 tablespoon has a very different calorie value than half a cup, right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Okay, so eating out, any other challenges that you have found in the process of eating out that would be helpful to discuss, or you think that other people may find as well?
Well, like I said, in more social settings with family,
Yep.
Again, I'm used to going to particular restaurants
Yep.
and just eating something right off the menu and not really looking. And so,
Yep.
again, my family's been very supportive.
Sure.
And I do try and look at the caloric
Yep.
amounts that are
Yep.
in there, or I'll ask. I
Yep.
did that recently
Good
at a
for you,
restaurant.
Carl.
Had
And
a
did they have
salad.
it?
Yes, they did. The lady went over and found it for me, and she brought it back. So yeah, that
That's
was
awesome. So be your own advocate, right? And try and find out the
Absolutely.
information for yourself.
Yes.
You know, and it's surprising too, some restaurants that may not have a healthy stereotype will provide some healthy options. So it's just a matter of asking. You know, like I know Olive Garden, you can find calorie controlled menu items. At Cheesecake Factory, you can find calorie controlled menu items. Applebee's, Chili's, restaurants that some of their calorie content can be very high, but you can find some healthy options that still taste good. So don't feel like with your family, if your family loves Applebee's, it doesn't mean you don't go to Applebee's, it just means you seek out the healthier options. So that can be very helpful. Another piece, what have you noticed about the sides or extra things that you order when you're trying to watch your calories?
Well, certainly the amount of food, the overall size and quantity I've tried to reduce. Again, I go back to the salad I had the other day. It had albacore tuna on it, and I just had a half salad. And you know, I'm to the point now that that's satisfying to me. So.
And you know, a lot of restaurants can serve anywhere from 2 to 4 servings in one plate, meaning what you get on a plate can be 2 to 4 servings of what a suggested serving amount would be. Right? So if you cut it in half, that's probably going to be more of an appropriate portion size. That's a generalization, but for a lot of restaurants, that will hold true. You know, some tips that some people have found is they will wrap up half of their meal before they even start. Have you ever thought of that?
No.
So that is helpful for people who end up just kind of picking. So maybe they say, I'm only going to eat half, but then they're sitting there and they kind of keep picking. And I find in that situation to wrap up half of your meal and ask for a to-go box right away, and servers will provide this. And then you eat what's in front of you. So for those people who are sort of the clean your plate club, you know, it helps to manage portion sizes better that way.
That's a great suggestion.
Well, and the other nice thing about it, saves you money, right? Because then you have
I've got another meal. Prepared.
Exactly. So that's some way. And sometimes sharing a meal. Have you ever shared a meal with anyone?
Yeah, my wife.
Yeah, there you go.
It's a good idea too.
And then I guess just some closing tips of watching the keywords on the menu. So do you any idea as to what may be some healthy keywords to look for on a menu, and or words that may denote less healthy options?
Well, certainly the cheeses and things like that. Those are
so cheese sauce, things that are fried would be an indication that it's not prepared very healthfully, or sautéed or smothered. Those are all going to be keywords for higher fat content foods typically. And then words like grilled or broiled or roasted tend to indicate that they're going to be healthier preparation methods. So just some little tips that I hope that you found helpful. And,
absolutely.
But what was that little phrase that I said in the very beginning? A little key phrase. I know I'm really testing here.
Yeah.
Know before you go.
Oh, that's true.
Know before you go. So make sure you're choosy with where you go. If you have the time, go ahead and look it up and see if you can find the information, the calorie information. Be your own advocate. So when you get to the restaurant, ask the server, say, how is this prepared? Or do you have the calorie information available? Could you suggest something that would be a healthier option? So let the server be a resource. And then managing portion size can be another great way to help manage our calorie intake when we're eating out.
Sounds good.
So
good tips.
enjoy it when we're eating out, and not to eat out because we have to, because we've been packing and planning. So, and then also just a friendly reminder for all of our at-home contestants, don't forget that alarm is the keyword that you're going to want to use for your weekly progress check-in. Okay. Well, thanks everyone for watching and checking in with us today, and thanks to Carl Stedman and to Mark West for being participants. It's been a lot of fun, and they're only just beginning, so we'll check in with them throughout the challenge. Check out our website at myheartchallenge.com, and we'll keep updates being posted.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Carl. Yeah.